Would like to introduce the first panel discussion for today. After a 2-year hiatus, cinema audience are back to the theaters like never before. And as moviegoers make their long-awaited return to the cinemas, premium large format auditoriums have emerged as preferred destinations. These premium large format screens provide a more spectacular, immersive experience than what audiences can, of course, get at home. Several blockbusters, aided by the phenomenal experience of watching the movies in a premium large screen format theater, are redefining the movie viewing experience for moviegoers. And today, to decode the future of cinema viewing with premium large screen formats, please join me in welcoming on stage our industry leaders, Mr. Preetham Daniel, Vice President, Theatre Development, India, Southeast Asia, Australia, and New Zealand, IMAX. Mr. Senthil Kumar, co-founder, Qube Cinemas. Mr. Manoj Paramahamsa, a cinematographer. Well, I'm sure you've all watched his work in movies like Radhe, Shyam, Beast, to name a few. And finally, Eranna Yekbote, Chief Architect, ERA Architects. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give them all a huge round of applause, our panelists for today. And may I request the moderator of this session, Mr. Akshaye Rathi, Director, Aashirwad Theatres, to kindly take his seat. I invite Mr. Rathi to take over and start the proceedings.
Thank you so much, Michelle, for those introductions, and thank you to everyone on the stage for being here, as always. Thank you, all of you who've turned up for this session early in the morning here. And it's always a pleasure to be at the Big Cine Expo because as an exhibitor here, I feel like I'm among my own, all of you exhibitors. So glad to be here after all these years of the pandemic at a time when the exhibition business is beginning to see a resurrection. So let's cut the chase loose and come to the topic that we are speaking of today, the premium large format. And of course, I'll take inspiration from a popular movie and call them the usual suspects for this discussion, because who else but IMAX, Qube, an architect who designs premium large format screens, and a very senior respected cinematographer, because if we exhibitors are the Marutis and the Mercedes of the world, content is the fuel that drives it. And in an era where streaming is becoming a new normal, the differentiating factor between not just the exhibition formats, but also the content that is played on it, plays a huge role in bringing the audiences. We'll start with Preetham, because IMAX is, of course, one of the most popular, one of the most celebrated and successful premium large formats that we have. India right now is a little over 20 screens, but lots of potential in terms of the growth in a market like India, which is movie crazy. Preetham, wanted to understand this from 2 points of view. One, now that over these last 2 years of the pandemic, people have been sitting home and watching a lot of content. And it definitely is something that enables a lot of convenience for them. But then in a market like India, where we don't have too many outdoor recreational avenues, movie-going continues to be one of the cheapest and more accessible family and friend outing for most Indians. How do we, through premium large formats like IMAX, Dolby Cinema, and various others, and you, of course, in the IMAX context, how do we differentiate the consumption experience for consumers through these kind of formats to make them choose that choice of going out for their entertainment or content consumption rather than sitting in the convenience of their homes and watching some great stuff from all over the world?
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Akshay, thanks for the question. I can't talk on behalf of others and what they can do, but I can tell you what IMAX is doing. Um, Out of the pandemic, we saw that people prefer to go watch a film on IMAX, not just in India, globally, other than over their regular sort of cinema offering. And I think that just leads to one main element, which is experience, and content quality makes the whole world of difference. If I can, the television screens, I come from, in my previous stint, I worked for a company that manufactured movie screens. So one of the amazing arguments we had there was the screens in our houses today are so good in terms of quality that what do I expect when I go to a cinema? And do I expect it to be equivalent to that of what I see at home, or can it be a tad bit better? Can that experience add a lot more? Can it bring in a social element? And I think we check all the boxes from an IMAX. The filmmakers today are designing movies for an IMAX screen. That helps. So what you see on an IMAX screen is obviously a little bit more different to that you would consume on a regular screen. So a lot of different factors have helped, but the one main element of people coming out of their houses to watch movies is got to do with the premium experience, not just a premium large format, but the premium large format packed properly with the backing of a right content, the technology, and the marketing element of it. So those are some of the keys that needs to be checked in. I can't talk for others, but yeah, as a brand, that's what we've done, and that's what we've been good at, and that's what we're stuck to.
Thank you. Coming to you, Senthil. Of course, Real Image is one of the most premium and best-known projection system deployment company in the country, and I'm sure a lot of us out here, including me, are your customers in that sense, partners, I'd like to say, because it truly works like a partnership. Senthil, much like what Preetham said, the quality of screens at home has actually been, enhancing over the years. And right now, it truly is a spectacular quality that television screens at fairly reasonable costs can offer. Of course, as the exhibition sector, we need to offer significantly more than that. And Real Image has been a pioneer with formats like Epic, which completely transform the consumption experience for consumers. But having said that, Epic still has a limited count of screens. It's still the regular theatrical format where Real Image has a lot of installations that are still the bread and butter of the exhibition sector in terms of where the money comes from, especially for regular films, if we are not talking of the Top Guns and the Triple Rs of the world. So Senthil, what can the projection angle bring to the table to counter the great quality of screens and sound that people are being able to, afford at home at reasonable prices?
Good morning, everyone. One of the things as far as regular screens is concerned is they are still a social experience, and that is the big differentiator between watching at home versus watching in a cinema. Having the emotions of hundreds of people influence you, and having this shared experience of laughter and tension and fright and maybe action is what really makes the movie experience better and something that everybody seeks. It doesn't, however, have to be, see, most people, even if they have a great TV at home, are still going to be in a room where there is a lot of other interruptions. You're never going to have a situation where you are a slave to the screen and where you have to concentrate, because if you don't concentrate, you're going to miss something. And that simple change of outlook between I am in control of the screen versus the screen is in control of me changes how you perceive that movie and your enjoyment, therefore, of that movie. And that's the big difference about the cinema experience. One point I want to make is that as far as our format, Epic, is concerned, our motivation was, what if you can give virtually everything that a premium large format needs and make it accessible, not just to the audience where they don't have to pay a premium, but also to the exhibitor who doesn't have to pay a premium. So it's not a great deal more expensive than a regular screen. And what if, even to the creative community, there isn't a greater deal of pain in order to get your content on this large format. And that really is the idea, that yes, you can have a great social experience by coming to the cinema, but a PLF format could give you a even more larger than life image if we can make it affordable.
Thank you, Senthil. Eranna, as Senthil pointed out, through formats like Epic, they are trying to make the premium large formats financially more accessible to the audience as well as the exhibition fraternity. But what's certainly not cheap is the cost of real estate that gets deployed to set up a cinema hall. And especially if it's an IMAX property or a Dolby Cinema property, it's more space that you require either in that mall or on that piece of land to really create it. Tell me something, so while, it's broadly been the national chains that are deploying formats like IMAX and 4DX and more, are the hundreds and hundreds of single screens or independent screens that exist all over the country, many of which in the northern parts of the country have witnessed diminishing revenues over the years, is that an opportunity from the point of view of an architect to retrofit and redesign, make them extremely relevant again in terms of their box office impact by turning them into premium large format screens? And if so, what are the kind of opportunities that exist? Because what they have is serious volume, space. What can be done with that?
Yeah, hi everyone. Good morning to everyone. I think it's a very interesting question. So I think there are two parts of this question. See, premium large format takes a lot of real estate in a mall. Nowadays, there are malls being made, but the malls are coming in a very slow pace. But then the real estate in the mall is so very expensive, and to put a premium large format, we need to actually plan it from the beginning of the planning of the whole building, because the large format takes a lot of space in terms of the footprint, in terms of the height, which is very, very important for the large format, because the screen size itself should be immersive, and the sound also would be immersive with the screen size. So the guests coming in and going out has to be a very important factor. Now coming to the second question, India has been having cinemas from ages, like from many years, and you will find a large screen, a single screen, anywhere in the world, in any corner or any small town. It is a challenge to convert into a large format, but the challenges are equal to actually run it and get the movies in it. But the old screen has its own issues, like the structure. If we have the proper drawings, we can certainly convert many of the single screen into a large format with the large screen and give that overall look of immersive experience what we can give to any of the large format like an IMAX or an Epic or any other large format.
Got it, thank you. Manoj sir, coming to you. You've just heard the point of views of IMAX, Real Image and an architect about the need to really give a very differentiated, larger than life experience to the consumers today. And that's what really drives them to the cinema halls rather than sitting at the convenience of their home and watching content. Now, as somebody who's on the content creation side of things, as a cinematographer, do you feel the need to really ensure that the kind of content that is created for the theatrical format is designed very differently compared to content that is designed for the home viewing experience? And if so, what do you think are the kind of factors that you as a content creation technician focus on in a very specific manner to enhance that experience and make it theatrical worthy?
Hi everyone. I'm just a little odd man out in this panel. So everybody's like more into the business side. I'm being a technical side. I just want to go little into a flashback so that I can answer this question so efficiently. So this is not the first time we are facing this kind of challenges, people getting into theaters, right? So every invention of a technology will make the mother technology little subsidized. Like for example, The 19th century when cinema the greater invention happened, a lot of theaters suffered when cinema came in. Similarly, when 1950s to 60s, where the 35 millimeter film is a so popular format, suddenly invention of television made the entire film industry go take a step backward and start rethinking what to make sure again to get the people back to the theaters. That is where the first widescreen formats were introduced. Like a lot of technology was put towards that, but again it becomes so expensive. We can't change the entire processing in one go. So that is where some like a brilliant invention happened. It's called anamorphic screening, which most of the theater owners we might know what is anamorphics, right? It's a very simple process where putting a converter, make a 35 film into a widescreen format. It just stretches the image, and once the decoding of a de-anamorphic lenses, putting in a theater makes the image bigger. And this made a major difference, and the anamorphic was a major successful format for all the smaller distributors and theaters to convert their screens into larger format. And it survived another 50 years, like 90s, 2000, till 2000, the anamorphic was a very successful format. Then again, other invention, internet, piracy, a lot of other things stopped filmmakers. They suffered a lot, and theaters suffered a lot in 2000. And again, the same things were discussed, and a lot of single screens were closed. A lot of single screens become like, as you said, like a Kalyana Mandapam or another. It went for some other real estate. A lot of theaters were losing. That is where Qube in India, I don't know, like in worldwide, how the digital cinema evolution happened. Because of Qube, a lot of cinemas survived. They took over because the expense of running a show becomes so expensive. People are not coming into theaters, and they started giving a simple solution like a digitize your projection. That is how digital cinema started in India, and that made a lot of theaters survived. And later, coming back to now, say this is another challenge what we're facing to get back the audience to theaters. And this time I'm so happy that every time there's an invention, we need to find a solution. We always had a cheaper solution. For example, when the anamorphic introduced, it's not one proper solution where there's a lot of light loss when you use the lenses, and there'll be a lot of color aberrations, but still, at least we got a bigger image, we're so happy. Then a lot of people started producing good lenses. So we don't need to use any more adapters. So a lot of manufacturers came and built very good lenses so that the images are so sharp, and it's also speed. So same thing when we started digital cinema also, initially it was, we call it as a e-cinema, like a very low resolution files. And slowly we generated to get the D-cinema quality, very standard. Now the 2K become 4K. So once the technology is evolving, we'll try to improve in every aspect. Now the phase what we are is, the cameras are all become digital. We are no more shooting films nowadays, except very few filmmakers like Nolan, still they have that passion to shoot in films, which is the expensive process because there are no more labs to process your films. So we have to go for digital cameras, and the digital camera manufacturers, someone like Arri, who are in this business for 120 years, and the newer companies like Red Cinemas, Red from America. So their cameras are so versatile to capture a lot more information, and every day they're producing new generations in cameras, and whatever you're seeing as a 2K, 4K, we are shooting right now in a 8K resolution, which we capture much more pixels, much more sharpness, much more detail in color information and all. So now I'm so happy that, for example, IMAX or any Epic Cinemas, this is not a cheaper solution to start with. So even this technology is not suddenly started because COVID happened or a pandemic happened. So this is something which was an R&D for more than 10, 15 years back. So IMAX has two things to do. One is they have their own cameras. It's a huge, bulky, very expensive cameras. Not all the filmmakers can afford. Only very premium people, it's a big network where we need to submit their script, where they'll finalize whether they want to come in board, and a lot of, as we discussed, the agreement issues. And the second thing is we can still use the same Arri cameras or Red cameras, and we can give a content to IMAX. So they'll do a mastering. so that they'll have their own norms. So that we have to give a correct wide aspect ratio, and we have to give all the sound files to them so that they remaster, and they'll try to make it to that kind of level which almost equivalent to what we shot in our original IMAX cameras. And Epic also has the real new format where like it's almost like the same aspect ratio of any television. So nowadays we're not seeing this 4:3 TVs, right? So everyone is using 16:9 televisions. Everything is smart TVs. Now the aspect ratio of Epic or IMAX and the smart TVs or a Netflix productions are almost equivalent to a one. Almost we call it as a 16:9. Somebody we call it as a like a 1.7:9, a DCI specs and all. It's almost similar, whereas the contemporary filmmaking still most of the DOP shoot nowadays is a 2.35 ratio, which we see a lot of blanking, the black space in television sets. When this technology, when all the awareness of the theater owners and distributors make the progression so that there'll be a common aspect ratio for all the filmmaking, all the media content which is going to develop in future years, so that we don't need to worry, like there'll be a lot of headroom space. We can see more of the, the sets, the location, the beauty of any natural locations. We can, because what right now, the camera exposes so much of details, so much of information, because our system, which is somewhere logged in anamorphic format for past 40, 50 years, we are not able to put that extra space. As sir told, there's a real estate expansion to be there. But I think it's really worth to do that. All the theater people should really go for it and try to expand your screens little more bigger. So that definitely there'll be a major breakthrough to get back audience. And to answer the question very precisely, that yeah, of course, every time the content is the success. So even we had another speech with Vivek sir, how he was targeting, how he was delivering the idea of how the content should be the hero of the entire business. But yeah, eventually we are in an industry where we have this stardom always overtakes. But still, recent films like Triple R and Bahubali and whatever KGF, the success, me being in the industry, and all the heroes have started rethinking on their choice of script selections. They don't want to do a little like the mediocre films anymore. So they are just trying to listen to more scripts where the presentation, the epicness of going to be a little larger, so that the audience is going to come back. So whatever Vivek sir is trying to impose, the same thing, even all the stars having the same impact on them, even the filmmakers, like directors, the storytelling going to be a little more enhanced way. It's not only about the big screen, the content has to be really appealing. For example, even the same, even Hollywood also going through the same issues like past 10 years when the Netflix is doing much more, very content-driven shows or movies, where only Marvel or someone like a Fast and Furious kind of the franchises only excel well in theater business, because people nowadays, they can identify which is content driven and which is giving little that thrill, little that more bigger screen experience. So they're just trying to make a choice between, when they see the trailer, when they see the content, then and there they try to make sure okay, this film, we don't need to watch it in theater. This is, the content is looking very mediocre, very normal. We can watch it in whenever it comes to television. So this is the difference happening in both the Hollywood or even our industry. So now it's high time, even the filmmakers are thinking to present something in a larger scale. So yeah, maybe a lot of contents are coming to me, and even we are working in some other technology with Qube also to how to make much more surrealistic content, to using virtual production technologies and other aspects to make the audience to come back to the theaters again.
Thank you, sir. Very interesting insights, and I'll come back to you with a few questions on your points. But before that, Preetham, well-known fact that India is a very under-screened market. And especially, I mean, if you measure it in terms of the count of screens per million against a market like China, which is similarly populated as India, we are certainly falling short. And not only is the count of screens very low, the count of premium large format screens is extremely low in India at 20 something for IMAX. No Dolby screen in the country so far. And for a movie loving, movie crazy nation like India, where we do put out large screen spectacles like a Triple R, like a Bahubali, like a KGF, a Shamshir, which incidentally came on IMAX. What do you think can we do? Where are the opportunities to really push that growth of the count of screens, especially in the context of premium large format? How do we, like Senthil pointed out, how do we find ways to make it financially accessible, not just for the audience, but for the exhibition fraternity to be able to have more of those?
Well, I'll start with the underscreening sort of part of the question. What do we have today? About 170 odd thousand screens globally, and we have about 1,600 IMAX screens globally. To your point that you started off earlier in the session, we do have 21 IMAXs open, but we have about 40 contracted. So there's a lot in the pipeline that is yet to open, and that's heavily relying on real estate and the development around that. As a brand, I think we've gone over the phase where IMAX is the most expensive product, what have you. In the next two months, we will be opening the first IMAX in Coimbatore, which is unheard of. If somebody had told me 3 years ago that IMAX could be possible in a place like Coimbatore, I wouldn't believe it, but we've now had it. I'm in discussions in many tier 2, tier 3 locations for an IMAX. I think we've sort of penetrated that part of it. We are underscreened, but we also, we're not an IMAX screen every next door. It has to be a flagship location. It has to be, somewhere where the audience prefer to see themselves and be themselves, right? So from that perspective, I think we're well positioned in the country. We will be about 25 to 26 IMAX by the end of December. So we'll have a decent size screen count in the country. But we have a lot in the pipeline, which will obviously open over the due course. But the interesting bit in the entire part is the fact that it's not an expensive product anymore. We've got different, I think the game changer was laser. In the Xenon world, we did have 1 or 2 products which made it like a product for a tier 1 multiplex only sort of commodity, but it's not anymore. The new lasers are something that's more affordable for everyone in the tier 2, tier 3 markets as well. So I think that's my answer for the underscreen part. We're well positioned in this country, and I think we'll grow stronger.
Thank you. Senthil, while we're talking about the large format in terms of Epic or IMAX, where the size of the picture or the auditorium comes into change, another differentiating factor, which is maybe not premium anymore because it's common, but a very clear differentiator in terms of the consumer experience, is something that we've had since a while, which is 3D. And Real Image, of course, deploys a lot of screens that are 3D enabled. Now, Senthil, as the content creation industry and as the exhibition sector, what do you think is the way forward on that, on 3D? So we've had films which are set in a similar milieu. Like we've had Sanjay Leela Bhansali's Padmavat, which was converted to 3D. And then we've had Om Raut's Tanaji, which was also a period action drama similar to Padmavat in 3D. And the results of the 3D revenues both have been very contrasting, where one earned a bulk of its revenues from 3D, and the other one probably had a very fractional amount of money coming in through the 3D format. So as content creators and as exhibitors, how can we deploy the 3D medium optimally to make it that differentiating factor that makes people want to come to cinema halls to experience it optimally?
That's actually a very good question, and it needs to be addressed a bit frankly. So excuse me if I offend anybody. I think there are 2 things about 3D. One is that if you make a great 3D film with a lot of effort, it can be fantastic for the audience. It can be worth watching in 3D. I think we all saw that in the beginning with Avatar 1. And since then, there have been a few 3D films that have been made very well. But 3D is also used as one other thing, both by producers and exhibitors. It's been used as a way to just charge a premium. And when you use 3D that way, it loses all of its appeal. And that's what we need to avoid. We need to make sure that whatever we are making is wonderful for the audience where they really want to experience it in 3D. Because 3D is one more aspect of a movie which involves you more, and therefore it'll add to the popularity of your movie. But 3D is also something that causes a little bit of eye strain, however good the technology is. And so it needs to be used wisely, it needs to be used creatively well. That really is the differentiator, I think.
Got it.
And we also need to recognize as exhibitors that there's extra money to be spent if you want to do 3D properly, because the light levels that you need on the screen to reduce your eye strain and fatigue is much more. So the losses because of the 3D alternate frames going is already half, and then the other factors that play reduce it to around 25 to 30% of the original brightness. So this means that you have to spend a lot more on the brightness of the projector that you employ, and if it is a lamp-based projector, the lamp cost is going to be significantly higher because you're running it at a higher power level for the 3D show. So these are all factors to consider, that we use 3D sparingly with the best movies and in the theaters that are really spending the money to make that 3D experience good.
Thank you. Coming back to you, Eranna. So Preetham just talked about how IMAX as a technology has become more financially accessible to exhibitors to deploy. And like you mentioned, and we discussed this, the real estate, of course, is what it is. It's expensive. Now, what are the technologies in the architecture side of things that can enhance the growth in terms of count of screens and possibly make the creation of premium large format screens a lot more effective in terms of cost and time, possibly? So there has been a lot of talk about prefabricated structures that that can be erected and made functional within 3 to 6 months. Is that the way forward? Are there any other new technologies or avenues in the context of architecture, creation of screens, that can catapult the growth of the exhibition sector?
Yeah, so coming to this thing, once we start designing, it's always better to plan the premium large format in the beginning, so that the format gets its real value in terms of design. But when we do that sorry, I didn't get your questions.
Okay. I'm saying, are there technologies in the context of architecture
prefabrication.
that can enhance prefabrication or any other technologies of the sort which can catapult the growth of the sector in terms of the count of screens? And can they be deployed to the premium large formats?
Yeah, see, prefabrication is very immature for putting into an IMAX, because there is a lot of acoustical issues which comes with prefabrication, and putting it into a context and making the whole room isolated and the experience, it becomes very difficult. In smaller towns, in a proper city, we can still do it. And once we are doing in the mall and all that, it becomes very complicated, because there are various different types of usage which happens below, like parking and then food court and then shops below. The challenges are immense. The designing of the roof is very important in a large format, because the sound shouldn't pass from one space to the another space. Earlier you said one question about putting it into a smaller towns and where the real estate, the cinema is existing. It is easier there where the real estate already existing, and it has been, the cinema is sitting there from a very long perspective. We can convert that large screen into a cinema, and we can perhaps add 1 or 2 small screens and make that whole project more viable and make it more functional and buzzing to the overall experience of a moviegoer and an audience for the IMAX.
Sure. Manoj sir, coming back to you last, I guess one thing that Mr. Agnihotri spoke about in the session right before is about how the Hindi film fraternity is possibly not being able to create enough content that is theatrical worthy. And honestly, I mean, with the kind of revenues that have happened for some of the recent releases in Hindi cinema, they have been a bit disappointing. All of us had more to expect out of them. And somehow the southern fraternities, including in this week, and I mean all of them from Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam, Kannada, have been able to score a lot more frequently in terms of movies that are theatrical worthy, that give you that theatrical cinematic high. What do you think, as a cinematographer who's involved in the entire process of creation, which I'm sure starts at the level of scripting, storyboarding, and then planning the shots as a cinematographer and then executing them? So what are the factors that the Hindi fraternity needs to focus better on to play catch up in this whole attempt to create those cinematic experiences?
It's always from the beginning when you see content-wise. So we, as a South films, and majorly when you talk about good content, it will be from either Tamil or Malayalam films. Okay, I'm not talking about the scale. Okay, so when you talk about content-driven films, it's always we had a superior hold on the industry. So maybe the Bollywood has much more advantage because their scale is always big because all the Hindi films can be screened all over the country. Okay, so to start with, when you say it's a Hindi film and you have the budget starts in a bigger numbers. So automatically the locations, everything used to be grandeur for them. So that is why that always the attraction towards Bollywood, and even Bollywood attracts towards the Hollywood. So because the expansion, that is what. But when talking about content, we had this advantage of being making very sensible contents and all these things. Now the major breakthrough came from maybe we can call it as like the globalization. Okay, so now it's like a global village. If you go for a mall, you can't differentiate a mall in a LA and in a Chennai. So that is how we developed together. So there are a lot of screens. Initially, even when I studying if there's a film, Rajinikanth's films released, there'll be only in the city, it must be releasing in 4 to 5 screens, right? So there won't be much more options to watch a film. To get a ticket, we have to struggle to get a ticket and watch a film. That is what the situation. But now, in city, our Rajinikanth's film is releasing more than huge numbers, right? So this is something which made the big difference. Even the revenue started growing, and the popularity and people, all the stars having this popularity all over the country made our filmmakers, the South filmmakers, to give the scale. Okay, so the difference the same. The content we used to give always better. Now we are getting that little scale also with the content. So we are trying to make it more detailed. We are not taking them for granted. So the films, even there are some South films also making big bomb in box office, because some films they're not so serious about delivering a good content, and it's not about delivering a good content also, and the way you shoot, the way you detailedly make films. So that is what happened. Whenever we talk about any successful film, again we are going back for these 3 films only: Bahubali, Triple R, and KGF. So it's a lot of amount of detailing, a lot of days, number of shooting days, and they have this vision already that this is not only going to cater for our own regional audience. They had this image, the vision from the day one. So they planned the film very well. They took 2-3 years to make their film. So every scene will go too many versions. They'll reshoot the films. They reshoot the scenes. When they see, no, it's not up to the mark with the previous scene, this is not working, they'll cancel the shoot, they'll try to rewrite it. So yeah, so the point is, all the films can't be made in such a way, but now the competition is like that. So that's what I'm telling. All the filmmakers are stopping their, the regular format film. They're just revisiting all most of them trying to, as we speak about the mythological content, does little well. So trying to dig out the scripts where we can show the scale and the detail. Okay, so we have the best epic, something like called Mahabharata. All the stories you take any stories, everything will be coming in the format of either Mahabharata or Ramayana only. So now people are trying to make more detailed scripts, and even we are expecting Brahmastra to be something in that level. So they're trying to put our own culture, our own elements, and make stories out of it, right? So yeah, so everywhere this debate is going between the South and so it's now we have to be more universally present than comparing, dividing it more, because we as an audience, and again that is what even the Netflix or any OTT platform made people unite, so they can watch any content in any place, right? So that is something universally is happening. So we have to accept the fact that if you make a good content, it can go any places. Like our content. Making good business in China, in Japan. So before that, it was not like that. Right? So whenever we do a war movie, basically Japanese and Chinese likes to watch war movies. They don't worry about which language it is. If you make a good war movie, they are ready to watch. So this is how we have to target our own audience, and if you then you can easily sell the content more. And as I said, sensibility. The scale is there now, so we have to put much more sensibility. I think, Hindi people will start adopting the idea to how detail you make the film. So they are also hiring more directors from South. For recently, like Atli is doing a Shah Rukh Khan's film where the buzz is little more bigger, and and we are also trying to get more filmmakers from Hindi also. Like a lot of technicians are transporting. So now it's becoming like one industry, like, so when you talk about English film, everybody knows only Hollywood. We don't know whether London makes films, So English, we know it's Hollywood. That is how it's going to be like that now. It's going to be like an Indian common industry where we make big films, and then only the theatrical revenue, the investment, whatever IMAX invest, everything, we need to get back money. It has to be more globalized content nowadays.
Thank you, sir, and those have been very insightful thoughts. Here's hoping that the partnership of content creators and content exhibitors goes ahead by leaps and bounds, and we can bring audiences to cinemas in a much bigger way across the country. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for those insightful thoughts and for being here. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.